Okay, so our next little group of vignettes starts with Cathy, Queen of Cats. And Cathy, we're going to find out, is the first friend that Esperanza tells us about from her neighborhood. Cathy says that she is the great, great, great cousin of the Queen of France. Sounds like a story to me. She is described as living upstairs over there next door to Joe, the baby grabber. So this makes me think apartment, but we're going to find out later that she does live in a house. So it's a little vague. And I think this is also part of what happens when children tell stories, is that, details are a little bit soft. We have another little reference to just various people in town. The baby grabber is full of danger. Benny and Blanca own the corner store, but they say don't lean on the candy counter. There are two girls, raggedy as rats, living across the street. You don't want to know them. Edna is the lady who owns the building next to you. She used to own a building big as a whale, but her brother sold it. Their mother said, no, don't ever sell it. I won't. And then she closed her eyes. The mother died, is what that means. And he sold it. Alicia is stuck up ever since she went to college. She used to like me, but now she doesn't. So we're getting introduced to a bunch of different characters in a very brief sort of way. Just to remind you, I am keeping track of the important characters, and I do have Cathy listed as the first friend. She has cats and thinks that she's related to the Queen of France. She will move because the neighborhood is bad. So that's what we find out on this next page. Cathy has tons of cats. I'm sure you've known people in your community who have lots of cats. The cats that sleep like donuts, cats on top of the refrigerator. Her house is like a cat heaven. So this is a lot of similes here. And what Cathy says to Esperanza is, I'll be your friend, but only till next Tuesday. That's when we move away. Got to. Then, as if she forgot I just moved in, she says that the neighborhood is getting bad. Cathy's father will have to fly to France one day and find her great, great distant grand cousin on her father's side and inherit the family house. Again, another big story, most likely, because this is what Cathy told her. In the meantime, they'll have to move a little further north from Mango Street, which is what people do every time people like us keep moving in. So this is a reference again to the shame Esperanza feels for how her family is treated. That, she recognizes that as a Mexican, that other people might judge them. And that's what she's experiencing with Cathy. There's also this sense, I think, that I'm sure you've either felt this way when you were a little kid, or someone who was like this when you were in school, that kids want to be someone better than who they are sometimes. And this goes across culture, across socioeconomic class and everything else. Sometimes little kids just want to be different from what they are. And so that's kind of what Cathy seems to be doing, that, she's got this royal lineage or something that she believes is going to save her at some point. The next vignette is called Our Good Day. And this is a cute little story about two new friends, Rachel and Lucy, that Esperanza meets, and they ask her for $5. So they say, if you give me $5, I'll be your friend. This is what Lucy says. And Cathy says, oh, don't talk to them. Can't you see they smell like a broom? Another simile. We can definitely get the impression that Cathy is judgmental and that she thinks she's better than everybody else. But Esperanza doesn't care. She likes these girls, and she describes them. Their clothes are crooked and old. They wear shiny Sunday shoes without socks, but I like them, especially the big one who laughs with all her teeth. I like her even though she lets the little one do all the talking. So $5, the little one says, only $5. Cathy is tugging my arm, and I know whatever I do next will make her mad forever. And then she decides she's going to run in the house and get $5. She doesn't care about Cathy. Cathy's leaving anyway, right? Esperanza has $3, and she takes $2 from Nenny. Nenny's not home, but she's sure that she'll be glad when she finds out that they own a bike. So the $5 is to help buy a bike. Lucy is the big one, and Rachel is the younger one. Rachel is the one that does all the talking, and they're collecting money to buy a bike. And so she tells them her name, and they don't laugh at her name. So that's also just showing that they're sort of the same, that they appreciate each other, they accept each other. And Lucy says that they come from Texas, and they sort of talk about how one of them was born in Texas and the other one was born here in Chicago. And they decide now they're going to take turns with the bike. They own this bike. They're going to, one day it's going to be each girl's turn to have the bike. Esperanza doesn't tell them about Nenny yet, because that means there's a fourth person who's supposed to share the bike, because Nenny pitched in $2 not even knowing it. And Esperanza decides that's too complicated. But for the meantime, the three girls decide, since they're so excited to own the bike, they're going to ride it together. And so they all get on the bike. Someone's on the handlebars, and they ride crazily around the block. And so we have a nice description here of their community. They go faster and faster, past my house, sad and red and crumbly, past Mr. Benny's grocery on the corner, down the avenue, which is dangerous, laundromat, junk store, drugstore, windows and cars, and more cars around the block back to Mango. People on the bus wave. A very fat lady crossing the street says, "You've got quite a load there." And Rachel, who's apparently very sassy, says, "You got a load there too." So this is just a cute story about kids finding a way to have fun. And I'm sure you can relate to this too. I think about, when I was a little kid, like me and a friend one day just like walked around town with a wagon and tried to get people to give us old scraps of lumber so we could build a fort. I mean, we never built a fort. We never had enough lumber to build a fort. Or just the kind of games my kids would play. That's sort of what this reminds me of. The next vignette is called Laughter. And right away, it's about what's similar and different between Nenny and Esperanza. Nenny and Esperanza do not look the same. You would not tell from looking at them that they are sisters, unlike Rachel and Lucy, who definitely look like sisters. They have the same fat popsicle lips like everybody else in their family, which is a food metaphor, not the shy ice cream bells giggle of Rachel and Lucy's family. So here's another metaphor. So Nenny and Esperanza are alike in their behavior because they have the same laughter. They have laughter that's so big, it's like a pile of dishes breaking. So lots of metaphors and similes in here. I do think that we sort of just start reading this book and just absorbing these similes and metaphors as if it's how we always talk. I think they're so present in every description, and I think every single one of them is something we can relate to. Breaking dishes, ice cream, popsicles, all these things we can connect with, especially our childhood selves. One day they were passing a house that looked like houses I had seen in Mexico. She says this here at the bottom. I don't know why. There was nothing about the house that looked exactly like the houses I remembered. And she says to Nenny, "Look at that house. It looks like Mexico." Rachel and Lucy look at me like I'm crazy, but before they can let out a laugh, Nenny says, "Yes, that's Mexico, all right. That's what I was thinking exactly." So the important thing here is that as sisters, they have the same mind. They come from the same family, the same culture, the same history, and they see things the same way. And I think that's a nice bond. Remember at the beginning, Esperanza says that she doesn't feel like she and Nenny are that close because Nenny is younger and she feels responsible for Nenny. But we can see here that they are close, that there are things that they share. This next one, Gil's Furniture Bought and Sold, is about the junk store. So there was a reference to the junk store. When the girls rode that bike around the block, they passed it. An old man owns it. She says that her family bought a used refrigerator from him once. I wonder how long that lasts. And Carlos sold a box of magazines for $1 to that man. There's some details here that could be on quizzes, like that they bought a refrigerator from the junk man. He does not turn on the lights unless you have money to buy things, which is interesting. And that tells me that he's trying to save electricity. He doesn't want to pay for electricity in his small shop unless he's got money coming in. And then there's a lot of description of what we have. There's tables with their feet upside down, another personification example. She talks about how you can get lost in there. She says you can get lost easy. And of course, we know that that sentence should say you can get lost easily. But Esperanza uses a child voice. And I think as we read in this book, little paragraphs like this that are in a child's voice, it takes us back to our childhood. The owner is a Black man who doesn't talk much. And here's another example of a child's voice. I never said nothing to him except once when I bought the Statue of Liberty for $0.10. So Nenny chats to him more often. Nenny, I hear her asking one time, how's this here? How's this here? Again, another child's way of speaking. Nenny is smaller. She meant to say, what is this? Or, how does this work? Or something like that. How's this here? She says. And the man says, this is a music box. And they look at this music box. It's not what Esperanza imagined a music box would be. She thought it would be a pretty box with flowers painted on it and a ballerina inside. Instead, it's just a wooden box with a big brass record in it with holes. You may have seen something like this once. And then he starts to play it. And the way she describes all these similes that describe what it's like when the music comes out, it's like all of a sudden he let go 1,000,000 moths all over the dusty furniture and swan neck shadows and in our bones. What a great description. It's like drops of water, or like marimbas, only with a funny little plucked sound to it, like if you were running your fingers across the teeth of a metal comb. So they're captivated by the sounds of this music box. I don't know why, but I have to turn around and pretend I don't care about the box so Nenny won't see how stupid I am. So she's a little embarrassed for being so fascinated by it, so moved by it, which again is an indication of her age. At some point in elementary school, kids become more self-conscious about their feelings. But Nenny, who is stupider, of course she's not, Nenny is just more vulnerable and innocent, already is asking how much. And I can see her fingers going for the quarters in her pocket, but the old man says, this ain't for sale. So this is another, I feel like all these together are just taking us as readers back to our own childhoods, to the way we perceived things through our, 8-year-old eyes, our 5-year-old eyes. You just think about yourself when you were in preschool, kindergarten, early elementary school. That's sort of how these chapters read. This next one, Ortiz, he moved into Cathy's house. So remember, Cathy's only staying till Tuesday. So after Cathy moved out with her family, in comes this man. His name is actually not Meme, it's Juan. But when we asked him what his name was, he said Meme, and that's what everybody calls him except his mother. Meme has a dog with gray eyes, a sheepdog with 2 names, one in English and one in Spanish. This is like a motif in my mind, another sort of reference to dual culture, 2 different sort of names in this case, based on, where you come from and where you're actually living. The dog is big, like a man dressed in a dog suit, and runs the same way his owner does, clumsy and wild, with the limbs flopping all over the place like untied shoes. Cathy's father built the house Meme moved into. Okay, so this is interesting to me. It seems like a contradiction, because in the Cathy with Cats chapter, Esperanza says that she lived on the 2nd floor. But if this is a house, I think that she lived in the whole house. So who knows? Maybe someone lives downstairs. Maybe someone lives upstairs. Maybe Esperanza as a child just knows that Cathy's bedroom is on the second floor and that's where she lives. So there could be a lot of, this is just showing us, I think, that there are little breaks in connections between memories of children. So what's interesting, though, is the way this house was built. It's a very rickety house. The floors are slanted. There are no closets in the house. Out front, there are 21 steps. That could be a quiz question. All lopsided and jutting like crooked teeth, another simile. Made that way on purpose, Cathy said, so the rain will slide off. Is interesting. And when Meme's mom calls from the doorway, Meme goes scrambling up the 21 wooden stairs with the dog with 2 names scrambling after him. Don't really have any sense of how old Meme is. Another kid, obviously. Around the back is a yard, mostly dirt, and a greasy bunch of boards that used to be a garage. But what you remember most is a huge tree with fat arms. So again, personification. All around the neighborhood, you see roofs, black tarred, A-framed, and in the gutters, balls that never came back down to earth. So they can climb this tree. At the base of the tree, the dog with 2 names barks into the empty air. And there at the end of the block, looking smaller still, is our house with its feet tucked under like a cat. So again, personification. This is the tree we chose for the first annual Tarzan jumping contest. Meme won and broke both arms. So back at the beginning where I have my list of characters, I've added Cathy. So I mentioned she has the cats and thinks that she's related to the Queen of France, and she moves out on Tuesday because the neighborhood is bad. Lucy and Rachel are the 2 sisters who collect $5 to buy a bike that they share with Esperanza and eventually Nenny. And then Meme Ortiz, whose real name is Juan, moved into Cathy's house, broke both his arms jumping out of a tree, and he has a dog with 2 names.